Hello there. I'm going to jump right on in and I'm going to talk about the book of Ruth. Um, the book of Ruth, it's really one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's nice and short. So, those nice short books are nice because you can, get through them pretty quickly and kind of feel like you accomplished something. Um, but, let me give you some background on the story in case you're not familiar with the story. Ruth and Naomi are two women. Naomi was a woman who's a widow, and then her two sons died. So she had two daughters-in-law. So you're dealing with three widows here: the mother-in-law and her two daughters-in-law. And being a widow, that is pretty unfortunate for anyone. But in this time period in history, I mean, that is just particularly tragic because women were really, really dependent on men. Um, and Naomi was of an age where it sounds like she had probably gone through like menopause, and her two daughter-in-laws, they were still young enough to be able to marry again and have families with their new husbands. So Naomi, she said to her daughters-in-law, it was Ruth and Orpah. She said, "No, please go, like, leave me here. There's no hope for me. Just go. You girls are so young, do your thing." Orpah said, "It's been real. You're awesome." And then she went back to where she came from, where her people were from. It sounds like these were some sort of like intercultural marriages, so they were not all the same people. Ruth and Orpah were, they were just from a different place. And so, their husbands were dead. They were living among their husbands' people, so they were going to go back to, their people and, you know, just try and find a new marriage. Because that's pretty much the only option that women really had back then. So, yeah, Orpah, she kind of went on with her life, went back to her hometown, and Ruth decided to stay with her mother-in-law. And I'm going to read one of my very favorite passages. It's Ruth 1, let's see, 16 through 19. This is after, this is, Naomi still, trying to convince Ruth to kind of go on, and Orpah has already left to go back to her family. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me." When Naomi realizes that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. Those are some powerful words, like powerful. I mean, they almost sound like wedding vows, I mean, that was, I don't know, just a pretty amazing expression of loyalty and devotion from one person to another. So the point I'm trying to get at is I think that the world kind of needs to rethink what being single is all about. Because the world kind of tells people that are unmarried that you should, pretty much treat your entire unmarried life like it's spring break on Daytona Beach. Just kind of run around, do whatever you want, treat people however you want. And then one day, you're just going to magically meet this angel from heaven. Excuse me, and that's supposed to like change you and change your ways. I think that's a totally messed up way to look at life. Completely messed up. Because I feel like you just kind of practice habits, right? Like if you get in the habit of just seeing someone who is attractive to you and just pursuing them simply, to see if you can sleep with them or they can just entertain you for a while, you're basically just using them. You have no good intentions towards them and no long term, plan to have them in your life or to try and get them to be in your life. Like nothing like that. So if you just get in this habit of using people, no one's going to just like come into your life and magically appear and be your so-called soulmate or whatever and really change that. At least I don't believe so. Not really. So people carry all of these nasty habits of using people and just sleeping around. They carry it into relationships and marriages. And I believe that that is why a lot of relationships and marriages end up failing. And that's that. That's pretty much it in a nutshell, honestly. I think that when you're single, I mean, yeah, for sure, you do have a certain degree of freedom and you have less responsibility, particularly if you don't have children. However, that doesn't mean that you need to just, you know, run around town constantly and just spend your single years that way. Um, because, first of all, you don't necessarily know that you're going to get married ever. That's not promised. So, you just kind of spend your single years and then, you may, get to be 50 or so and you're just kind of like pushed out the game because, you're much older. People still in the game tend to be much younger. And then what? Then what are you really left with? You've wasted a lot of energy, probably wasted a lot of money too. Um, just, being on spring break. So I don't know. That's just my thought. That's just my thoughts on singlehood. Um, so Naomi, while she was single, you can say she was loyal, like fiercely loyal, um, very family oriented. She's a very hard worker. As the story goes on, they travel back to Naomi's hometown because she has some property there, sounds like, but women needed men to conduct their business for them, so they needed to find a man to conduct that business for Naomi so she could have some money to survive. And that's where Boaz comes in. Boaz is, he's described as prosperous, and Boaz is, sounds like he's a pretty good dude. He has that reputation. He's a pretty good dude. So these two single people, Ruth was very family oriented, very loyal to her mother-in-law, and it's not her mother, so and her husband had died, so she really didn't have to be, loyal to her mother-in-law at that point. And so she goes back to Naomi's hometown and she gleans fields. So that means after the whatever they were growing, I think it was wheat or whatever crop it was, that would get harvested. I think is the right word. And then whatever was just kind of the scraps that were left, Ruth would go and pick that for herself and her mother-in-law for them to survive. So she's a hard worker. And then we have Boaz over here, who was this prosperous guy. So clearly he was about his business, since he was prosperous, because that's really the only way that prosperity comes, really. I mean, you got to be about your business. So he was on top of that, and he had a reputation for being a good guy. He did not exploit these women like he could have. It happens to women all over the world. It's always happened to women when women are down and out, when women don't have a lot of money, when women don't have the protection of a family. Quite often, people seek to exploit them. often sexually, sometimes in other ways. But he didn't do that. He offered to help. And anyhow, make a long story short, if you don't know it, Ruth and Boaz ended up getting married. But they both had good characteristics before they met each other. Um, they were both like, pretty good people to other people outside of a marriage or a courtship. Um, so I think people need to kind of rethink singlehood. It's not all about, being reckless with other people's hearts and emotion and time. And then all of a sudden you meet this person who is going to somehow redeem you. And this is basically idol worship right there. Because Jesus Christ is what's going to redeem you, not, somebody that's real cute and friendly and charming and you fall in love with them. No, like that's just not what redeems you. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much that. Christ is what's going to redeem you, and faith in Christ, and giving your heart to Him, and then being obedient and following His ways. And that's what I believe. I have not been married, so I believe that that is what's going to make, a relationship a good foundation. And, ultimately, if you're going to have a family, that's what's going to have a good foundation for a family. Because if you set yourself up to have all these bad habits where people are just disposable and people are just tools for you in one way or another, I don't believe that marriage is going to change that. I don't. I think that you're just going to, in some way, shape, or form, always have that pattern. I mean, you may be a good little boy or girl for a number of years, but eventually, the real you is going to resurface. Or I won't say the real you, but the you that you've developed. And this mentality that, oh, men are not made for monogamy, or monogamy isn't natural. Well, that's how people have trained themselves. Think about all the people that have made the decision to be celibate and they're celibate. And think about all the people that are incarcerated and totally, have no choice but to be celibate. I mean, they didn't die of celibacy. So, anyway, rethink singlehood and what your single years are for. Enjoy your freedom, but don't waste it on foolishness, because you're going to take that same foolishness into a marriage and have problems. So, thank you all so much. Read the book of Ruth, it's a good one.